Thomas McDougall.
John Cowett.
Bob Carrier,
Ann Walsh.
Maureen Steer.
Larry's here, and Mike Bullion will not be here, and Lou Snyder will not be here. They're being excused. Welcome to the public hearing, I mean not public hearing, but the presentations of the budgets. Tonight, we're going to be looking at police, planning and code, the planning board, the conservation commission, and the ZBA, and outside appropriations. What I would like to have the committee do is please wait till the presenter of the budget is totally finished before you ask questions, just so they can focus on what they are saying. I'd like to have it done at the end to give them some courtesy. If those out there who are presenting their budget, please state your name and talk loud enough so everybody can hear. Okay, we'll start off with police.
Richard Krause, Chief of the Police Department.
Hold it, chief. We gotta salute the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, chief. Now you can go.
All right. So, like everyone else's PowerPoints, my PowerPoints are only slides that have changed, or only lines that have changed. The first line is full-time salary. That went from $436,854.40 to $501,474.01. That's a $64,619.61 increase. That increase is partially due to $10,000 added to the overtime line, $37,994 added for the SRO grant that we have applied for, and the balance of that is the 1.7% increase for the officers. I know the other departments have asked for the 2% merit as well. My department is not asking for the 2% merit because we have a projected step plan built into the police department, and that's what I'm asking for instead of the full 3.7%. I just want to go back to the $10,000 overtime added to the line. That is to correct what I feel has been a deficiency at the Milton Police Department since I've worked here. Currently, when officers go to court, the officer is paid a $30 fee to go to court. That's all they are paid. So if they go to court from 8 o'clock until 4 p.m., they make $30 for that. If they go to court for 15 minutes, they make $30 for that. Most other agencies pay some type of minimum for the officers to go to court. $30 doesn't even pay for childcare, and for some of the officers, it doesn't even pay for gas to drive to court. That's an issue from how I see it. You're not paying them a working wage. It's not like a regular citizen who fails to show up in court. The officer fails to show up in court, the case gets thrown out, the officer also gets disciplined by me. So it's a job, it's part of their job that they have to appear in court. We should be paying them an appropriate wage for that. Next line is part-time salary line. My current year is $12,000. The proposed, after speaking to the Board of Selectmen, is going to be $6,000. Many of you are going to look at that and see that that's a dramatic decrease from the last few years. We do not have an animal control officer, have not had one for a year now. My plan was to look and see after a year whether or not it was needed for us to employ an animal control officer. What we are finding right now is that we can get by without an animal control officer. The officers on duty are the ones who are handling animal calls. One thing that does cause us to lose is our rabies expert. Our animal control officer is our rabies expert. They are also the person who has the rabies series of shots. So when we have an animal, a dog or a cat that may be rabid, we are taking the risk of sending our officers in to do it. I don't think our officers are going to volunteer for the rabies series of shots. I know I'm not going to volunteer for it. So the plan is to have that $6,000 cover the part-time officer who is Marine Patrol and who covers some shifts for us when he's available. Next line is administrative assistant line. That line increased from $39,084 to $40,518.78, which is $1,434.78. This line does have the 2% merit and the 1% COLA in it, 1.7% COLA, excuse me. The administrative assistant did not get the bump that the officers got when the wages changed a couple of years ago. Next line is chief's salary. This line increased by 1.7%, went from $79,197.30 to $81,075.33. It's an $1,878 increase. FICA actually decreased due to removing the $6,000 from the part-time line. FICA is now down to $3,318.16. It's a $190.05 decrease. Medicare increased. Medicare went from $8,440.97 to $9,295.49, which is an $854.52 increase. Retirement increased. Retirement is a full year at 26.38%. We used to be at 25.4%. We've now had the increase. This will be our first full year of that. Retirement also increased due to wage increases and putting in the SRO grant. That went from $133,769.02 to $156,842.12. It's a $23,000 increase. Police electricity went up $402 for the projected 6% increase that we've been advised by PSNH is coming, or Eversource, not PSNH anymore. The cruiser purchase lease line, that line was moved out of my budget, and that's a decrease of $31,000 in my budget, but it is still something that it's been moved to debt services. So the total proposed budget for myself is $953,346.89, with a total increase of $86,071.99. The number that will show up for my budget on the sheets is $922,346.89.
Any questions from the board? Sam?
Okay, I want to go back up. I know you didn't mention this, but veterinary professional services, the $500.
Yep.
There are trust funds that will support that on a yearly basis. Genevieve, what the heck was the last name? I can't remember. Lockhart. I read the trust fund itself, and it specifically says plants and animals. That, obviously, as everybody knows, you can't spend the principal, you can only spend the interest, but I feel you should put that in. As a trustee of the trust fund myself, I would have no problem saying that's what they wanted when they developed the trust fund.
So the veterinary services line, that line is a little different than the line I thought you were talking about.
Either or.
So that line, just so we understand what that one is for when we have a dog that's struck by a car or somebody else's domesticated animal is struck by a vehicle. We can't locate the owner, we take it down, we go to the emergency vet in Portsmouth. They then treat it, then we have to go back after the owner once we locate it.
Right. But anything, basically what I'm trying to say, anything in your budget that's relative to an animal, obviously you don't have nothing relative to plants, so anything relative to animals, all right, you have, in my mind, as a trustee, all the right in the world to apply for that money. Now, some of the money is allocated for plants,
Right.
but there is money, and there's other people thinking they have a right to it because it's not all getting spent every year. So I feel you have every right to do what the original Lockhart family wanted that trust to do. Because it's very clear in there. She spells out, Genevieve puts it in there, plants and animals like 3 or 4 times. So in my mind, it's real clear. That's where I think you should really, to try to help your budget, go in and, I know it's not much, you know, anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a year, but I mean,
Probably
everything helps.
$500. The only fear with that is that $500 I can spend out of my budget without an issue. Trust fund money is going to have the trustees' permission. Most of the time, this emergency service is an emergency service. It's something that I'm giving permission.
But you
to
can
spend
do
that
no
money.
differently, Chief, than what they do for the plants and the memorial and everything else. That is pre-authorized. So you can go, in my mind, I would think you could go to the first meeting of the year and say, or the last meeting of the year, and say, I want to let me know I'm going to be needing get it voted, and then you'll know.
So have them allocate $500 towards veterinary professional services.
Yes. It even specifies in there to put animals to sleep in a humane way. So,
That is definitely something I will look at.
Anybody else? Yes, Ian.
Can we look at those FICA and Medicaid lines? That number just looks way too small.
Well,
don't forget,
FICA is not paid by
Okay.
full-time law enforcement employees.
Okay, that will explain.
Medicare is,
Okay.
FICA is not.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Larry, yeah. Just observation that the increase on the retirement represents a decrease in state funding from general revenues and an increase to local property tax for the increase.
Correct, that's been going on for the past 7 years, I think now.
Go on.
I think you said the FICA was for the part-time employees?
FICA is for non-certified law enforcement officers.
Okay, all right. Okay, I was gonna say, that looks like an awful lot for a $6,000 part-time salary. Okay.
No, it's
Okay.
for non-certified,
Secretary.
administrative assistants, part-time officers.
Yeah, that's what I thought, I just making sure I understood.
Anybody else?
Chief, just a point of clarification. The FICA line again, on the packet that we were given, there's a different number and it says an increase.
Yeah,
On
that,
the long form, it also says increase, so it's showing a decrease. I just want
Yeah,
to
it
make sure
should
it's
say
the long form we're
decrease.
going on.
you're going on the long form, it should say decrease. I missed that.
Anybody else? Anybody in the audience?
The other part of my salary line, if we do not get the grant, which we have not heard from the federal government yet, whether we're gonna get it or not. Sounds like Dover already had their answer, reading the paper the other day, but we have not heard our answer. That would decrease, obviously, the $37,997 out of my budget, which would also take money out of the retirement line as well.
One more question. Maybe we ought to give a few minutes on what that represents, because a lot of people probably don't understand where this is being filmed. A lot of people are going to say, what is that?
Well, the SRO grant is the COPS grant, has come out again. The COPS grant availability was for 7 different things this year. One of those things, and one of the high priorities, was an SRO grant. The SRO and this COPS grant is different from the 2009 COPS grant, which you'll remember, Stan. That was 100% paid, and the requirement was you kept the officer for the 4th year. This grant is completely different. It's a step grant, and it's capped at $125,000. One mistake that I read when I presented it to the Board of Selectmen and the school board was that some of the grants you do not have to keep for the 4th year. The SRO grant, apparently, we do have to keep for the 4th year. So we have to, as a town, we have to allocate the difference between the 125 and what it's going to cost the officer over 7 years. So the way I broke it down was to say $125,000 broken down over 3 years. It breaks down to a certain amount of money of that 125. The town then pays a gradual increase of that over those 3 years, and then in the 4th year, we have a smaller increase when we want to keep the officer.
Maybe you should go a little farther, what your plans are for this grant, as in what the officer will be doing.
This officer is mandated to be an SRO officer.
Okay,
So-
well, that's what I'm saying. Some people don't know, understand what SRO represents.
School resource officer.
Okay.
So the officer will be in the school 75% of the time that he is employed with us. During summer vacation and during the longer vacations, the officer will be available to the police department. So the other thing that will happen with this is the money goes into my budget up front, because that's where the officer will be paid out of, but the school then reimburses the town their portion of that, which their portion of that totaled out to $22,000.
Anybody else? Anybody in the audience? Okay, thank you, Chief. Next, planning and code. Brian?
Good evening, Brian Moores, Code Officer and Chairman of the Planning Board. I'll start with the Planning Board, no changes. It's the exact same budget we had last year.
Okay,
And in the Planning and Code, the increase, we have a decrease in FICA and Medicare. And actually, the only increase we have is in, let's see. Yeah, membership and dues. We're now members of the New Hampshire Health Officers, New Hampshire Building Officials, and the ICC. I'd like to join this year the Seacoast Building Officials Organization. It has an option of two more programs to go to for training, and that would be the increase. And you're going to see probably a 10 to 15% increase in most of the dues this year, but we won't get the invoice till the end of the year. That's basically the only increase we have.
Any questions on the board?
I have one.
Yeah.
Last year, where
Right
Brian,
over here.
did you get the 2% and the 1 point, the
Yes.
COLA and the 2% merit?
Yes.
Okay.
The salary went down in the full-time salary for the land use clerk. But she's new, and so it's washed it out.
Anybody else? Anybody in the audience? Moving on to Conservation Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Panic Conservation Commission. Chief, since we're only supposed to go through the changes, why don't we run that?
Okay.
So the Board of Selectmen only approved essentially the, what was it, 1,600? 1,700?
They had the 1,700 on the professional services line.
Right. Okay, so the additional requests are not coming through, but that remaining amount was a $100, rough $103 increase on the 2015 budget for water testing. And since then, we've been told by TPPA that this year the charge will be the same as last year. So actually, we can reduce that to $15.97.
That's under professional services?
Yes, and it's the water testing on the 3 ponds. We never know, we usually don't actually have that number by the time the budget process is happening. So I thought a $100 increase would be reasonable, but now we know what it actually should be. So we can move on to the next line. Well, if there are any questions?
They're going to wait after your presentation, that way they are.
Okay. We eliminated the office supplies because basically we're not using it. The $600 for membership and dues is the actual amount that we plan to spend on memberships for the organizations listed. Those are Moose Mountains Regional Greenways, the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions, the 3 Ponds Protective Association, and the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests. So that's a $325 decrease. Miscellaneous, we zeroed it.
Okay.
We actually did use that $150 this year, but legal defense is a new budget line request. The reason is that the town has a number of very early conservation easements that, the history of conservation easements is that basically the laws establishing them came in the late 1970s. People really didn't know what they were about or how to do them. The planning board accepted some conservation easements quite early. We have one from 1992, which currently is causing us litigation. And I can't really discuss it because it is currently in litigation. All I can say is that it's going to be very expensive. And we can expect that there will be other instances that are similar to this. We're told by Attorney Sessler that he expects the cost of this, which we expect to win, to be around $20,000. The conservation, currently we're paying for that out of the conservation fund, but that's really an inappropriate use of the conservation fund, not just because it wasn't the Conservation Commission that granted this easement. I don't even know if there was a Conservation Commission in 1992, but because when you have this sort of thing that can pop up, you should have a reserve fund, just the way the fire department has a reserve fund for fire trucks and the police department has a reserve fund for cruisers. These are expenses which you don't know when they're going to happen exactly. You're less able to plan for it than you can for a vehicle that's wearing out. But you know that sooner or later you're going to get hit with it. And And this kind of thing has the ability to completely deplete conservation fund rather quickly. The conservation fund is opportunistically funded by, when land is taken out of current use, we get half of the current use change tax. We haven't had anything from something like, well, we've had one payment out of that in about the last 5 years. You're not getting very much from that. In boom times, you get a lot, but it's a feast or famine thing, and it makes it very difficult to plan. So really, we should be starting a reserve fund. We asked for a new budget line so that we could be building up money to pay for this sort of thing. We know that the 2,500, we asked for 5,000, and the Board of Selectmen reduced that to $2,500, and in view of the budget situation, we're pleased with that. We know that neither one of those amounts would cover the actual expenses we're going to spend next year, but we want to get started with a budget for this kind of thing, which it's really an eventuality. We know it's going to happen. So that's the history of that line. Okay, so it's currently at 2,500. So the actual current total CC budget you should have in front of me, I think it's roughly $6,600.
Yeah, 6,600.
Yeah.
It's dropped with the 1597, doesn't it? It's dropped 100 and what, some dollars.
Right, 103.
$6,503.
For which one? $6,600. Minus
That's
the
not the figure. I don't have the figure.
Get that, 66 minus 103.
6,497.
6497.
That's right. Want to repeat that for me, Liz?
6,497.
Okay, add the other piece. Any questions? Any questions from the audience? Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
The next one is the ZBA.
Larry Brown, Stan and I are also on the ZBA. Lou is not here for the presentation. It's very simple. There is no change in our budget. Basically a little over $1,000, $1,085. For the information of the public, this includes a small fee, $250 for possible workshops, $50 for recording deeds. Notices for public hearings may run to $400, and then we have allowed $35 for various applications and public mailings. No change from last year.
Any questions on the board? Anybody on the audience? Thank you, Larry. Now we'll go to outside appropriations. Liz, are you going to bring that out?
Yes, I am. So this year, let's see, line 3, Elizabeth Dion, Town Administrator, line 350, Stratford Cap. They requested $8,550, and the selectmen reduced it to $7,250, which is the same amount as last year's appropriation. Line 351, Homemakers Health Services, they requested $2,374. The selectmen reduced it to $1,839, which is the same as last year's appropriation. Line 352 is a combo line this year. Two of the nonprofit organizations merged together, sexual assault support services and a safe place. So they've merged together, so this particular line item will host both of those organizations. They requested $1,800, and the selectmen reduced it to $825, which is the same as last year's appropriations for both of those individual line items. Line 353, AIDS Seacoast Response. This year they requested $500, the selectmen reduced it to $400, which is the same as last year's appropriation. Line 362, Red Cross, this year they requested 500, the selectmen reduced it to 325, which is the same as last year's appropriation. Line 363, A Safe Place. This has been reduced to 0 because this is one of the organizations that was merged into the other one that I already mentioned. The only reason I'm mentioning it is because it is a change from last year's.
Okay.
Line 364, CASA, this year they requested 500, the selectmen reduced it to 325, the same thing as last year's appropriation. Line 365, Coast Transportation, this year they requested $300, and the selectmen increased it to $325, the same as last year's appropriation.
Okay.
And you should have all the backup from each organization in your packet.
Yes. Any questions from the board? Larry?
I had been waiting for the new name for the merged organization. Has it come out yet?
The name that they used on their stationery, I believe, was A Safe Place / SASS. If they're gonna,
I don't think you're gonna get a fancier name.
if they come up with a new name, I'll be sure to let you know.
But second question. It is a curious thing, and for some probably proof we don't need them. But my understanding is that the federal education department has no position on DARE. And the question is, with the school resource officer coming on board, what should be the funding for the DARE program?
The DARE funding should stay the same. I don't expect the DARE officer, we will hopefully be sending an officer, regardless if we get the SRO program or not. Hopefully that officer goes the first 2 weeks of December for that training. So we're hoping to have DARE in school next year.
If you look at line 355, that's the funding for the DARE program. And that did not change from last year.
Tom, do I remember that at any other time youth sponsorship was used for what I would call civil youth activities?
Youth sponsorship used to be used, by the way, Tom Gray. Youth sponsorship was used for band trips, things of that nature. The students would come and ask for a donation. That hasn't happened for several years.
If it were to happen.
It'd be a board decision whether we give to them or not.
It's not appropriated, it was taken out of that line a couple of years ago.
Does the line 355 still include a hypothetical possibility of that use?
No,
Not at all. Okay.
the 1,500 is all for DARE.
Not a question, but just for your information, the back and forth negotiations and non-negotiations, federal highway, state highway, and local, the state has moved to use certain flex monies that they have control of, which may have an impact on the ability of Coast to bring its aging bus fleet, get it more modern, and continue to provide the same service. So it is a good thing that outside appropriation continues. It's one of the things you get from me going on Fridays.
Anybody else? Anybody in the audience? Yes, Chief.
Chief Cross, SAS and Sexual Assault Services and A Safe Place, they have actually picked up a couple of extra things that they didn't do before that assist law enforcement. One of them is called a lethality assessment, where if we have a domestic violence situation with the victim of that domestic violence, we then go through a spreadsheet of questions. If they score enough in, we have them call and we go through that process in getting them the proper services. They are those proper services. I know the selectmen have it at $825, but I would suggest to this board that that's probably as low as we should go because we do use that service quite a bit.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
This ends the appropriations, the budget presentations. So now we're gonna go back to our regular meeting. But the only thing I want to do is, Stan's been asking about the 2% merit, which is a legitimate question. The only thing I want to add something to it, that it is not automatically given. The town employees have to go through an evaluation, which starts in May and goes into June. And the department heads evaluate their employees. Then it goes to the selectmen, which they will decide who gets how much, if any at all. I just wanted to make it, in addition, it's not an automatic,
Correct.
okay? Larry?
One more, I just turned the page, I hadn't seen it. We used to provide money to the juvenile diversion program, which I think was mildly headquartered in Farmington. Is that still on?
It's not there any longer.
It's not there any longer, okay. Then, because I
That program anymore that used to be
Okay.
situated in Farmington. When the Shins laws changed, that program kind of went away.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay, is there any more questions to the presentations? Then we're gonna be going into regular session. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of October 13th. Has everybody had a chance to read them? I have a correction on it. Where it says no notice,
Excuse me, Bob, Krista. I wish the selectmen and the town administrator would stay to our comments. I don't know if they need to be someplace we can move it up, but, I mean, they're getting ready to pack up and leave, looks like. So,
We'll give it away.
so, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, they're willing to stay to the whole thing,
well, shouldn't take too long.
Okay, I'll just
Unless the school report takes. a
lock the
long
door
time.
then.
I'd like to keep it the way we've got it.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, now, notice is hereby given. That line needs to be taken out, because that should have went on the agenda that I had posted. And by cutting and pasting on documents I was working on, this is what happened. It got eliminated on the public notice. That was what was missing, was the time and the place. And there's just one, and other one on page 2, which is just is grammar. It's just above the emergency management, 3 lines up above, where it says, approved all the men get the maximum, approved did all the men get the maximum. That's the only changes I'm gonna be making in there. Is there anybody else that's got some omissions? I probably do have another one that Stan mentioned about merit raise to all the employees, whether they got them or not. I did not put that in. I'm going to put it in. Well, you mentioned it. I discovered it just when I made the change here. That'll be a change in there.
Not everything's in the minutes.
If you want them in the minutes, they're gonna go in.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'll have a summary at the end.
Is there any other? Yes.
Just knowing that there's both men and women that work at the fire department, we should probably change the word men to firefighters. Or employees or something.
Okay, whereabouts are we looking at?
The first one you changed, approved, did all the men get the maximum?
Okay, how do you like that phrase, men or women or men?
Employees,
Okay, change it to employees.
it's generic.
It was full-time employees, wasn't it?
Yeah, when Nick responded, he said the full-time employees did, so this one here needs to change. We'll put employees. Any other changes? Okay, now I need a motion to accept the minutes with the corrections.
So moved.
Anybody want to second it?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
And abstaining, okay, because I haven't read them yet. So my life.
I have it.
Yeah. One trip.
Okay. Now a review of the town reports, Ann.
School?
School. Did I miss something? Sorry.
you go. What I'm passing out is our projected fund balance for the end of the year. We're showing that our fund balance is gonna be $150,260.82, which will go back to, offset the tax rate.
So that's after warrant articles.
That's after warrant articles.
What was that amount?
$150,260. Of course, that is unaudited. The auditors are coming in next week to do our audit. It'll be finalized after that. Last year, I think we gave back $392,000 was used to offset the tax rate, but the bulk of that money was the $232,000 left over from the middle school building project that was never used.
That's it, Ann?
Well, and then we can review the monthly report on most of the health insurance information has been encumbered. Still early in our year, it's only our second month, so there's really not a.
So any questions from the board? Larry?
Observation, on my simple math, I subtracted 232,000 from 392,000, came out with 160, which is close to the 150. If Bruce Woodruff were here, he would be, I think, speaking for him, interested to see that the operating budget, as it goes down the road, is coming closer and closer to what the budget committee is trying to make it. I thought.
It was very close, and we need to keep in mind also that $100,000 of that money was the health insurance premium from the lawsuit that we hadn't been expecting when we created this budget, so we were cutting it pretty close last year.
Any more questions for the board? Okay, thank you, Ann. And Mike is not here for the review of the town report, but the expenditure report from September 25th, we're at 63.85% spent. We're in very good shape. There's going to be a difference in the next expenditure report, possibly this month. You're going to see a new line. It's called debt service. The lines are going to remove the fire department's pumper truck, the police chief's cruisers are going out of it, and so is the highway department trucks and the grader. They're going to be put on this line with interest and principal be showing. And when we do the budget, you'll see only one lump sum that we're going to go for. This is going to be a change. We're going to see it, but we're not going to see the zeros. We're just going to see zeros on the expenditure report. You will not see any, you'll see the figure, but it will not start till next year. And that's just something I should wait, probably when you see it, we can explain it a little bit more, but I went through this with the town administrator. What it does, it shows the true operating budget. The money that's in there, you can't use that. That's already taken care of. The cruiser goes for the payments. These are gonna be debt services that the whole town can see what we have for debt.
So to stop you there, and contingency and bonding is where the payment for the fire truck is.
Yes.
So that's gonna be removed out of there now.
Yes, it's going to go into all debt services, a brand new line that's being created. They're still working on it. When we might see it at the end of the month on the new report, so we can look at it. It takes away, it shows, because they're not part of the operating budget. You will see the actual, so when you see the percentage, it'll be more realistic than what you see right now.
See, I disagree with you, and I'm gonna tell you why. The new dump trucks, the grader, those aren't part of the budget. They would not be in the default budget because they were yearly voted, they were only voted in for 1 year. The fire truck is part of the budget because it's part of the default. The police cruiser is part of the budget, so it's part of the default. So I don't agree with that.
Well, I don't have any control over it.
I think the clarity of that is really being muddied up because you're showing it all as this is a commitment when it is not a commitment, especially with the the dump trucks and the grader, and this year, this is an instance.
May I speak?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? So you and I had spoken about this previously a month or two ago or so, and I thought the same thing, but since then I've learned differently. The contingency and bonding budget will have a new title, debt service, and everything like a bond payment, annual lease payment, the
Yeah.
interest, unanticipated expenses will remain in there. The two warrant articles that were approved this March, one for the grader, one for the 3 trucks, were approved by the voters. And it does not have to go before the voters again for each year of the lease. And
That's not the way it was presented to the people. That was presented to the people, and it was a majority vote, which meant it was a yearly thing. It would have had to been a 2/3 vote if it was for the distance of the commitment. I would research it. I don't think you're correct on that.
I have consulted with our contracted finance director. She has consulted with her legal counsel of 2 other towns that she works for. We also have a legal opinion from NHMA. In addition, those particular payments fall under the DRA chart of accounts for debt service.
I don't agree with that. I think the town's opening the people up to a lawsuit. Because I think someone's not gonna be happy with that decision. Because it was sold to the people last year that this was gonna be on the ballot every year.
I don't remember that.
Well-
I'm not saying it wasn't said, I just don't recall that.
Okay, Larry.
That part of that issue then can be answered very easily. One, obtain the text of the warrant. Secondly, obtain the suit experience of the 2 towns which are referenced through legal counsel for the municipal association and through our contracted accountant. That information would answer the question, because I agree with Stan that there seems to be an apple and an orange in the mix. However, if you cut them into pieces and put them in the same bowl, you serve it as fruit salad, and it goes on from that point. So it's a good point. You can answer it by the text of the warrant and by the suit experience and the written legal opinion of legal counsel from the municipal association.
There is also an RSA that the attorney from New Hampshire Municipal Association mentioned, and that is RSA 33:7-E, which is clear.
She's got the ballot right there. What was the question on the ballot? To raise and appropriate?
I think we're both working off the drafts. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a long-term lease/purchase agreement in the amount of $494,760, payable over a term of 7 years for 3 highway department 6-wheel dump trucks with snowplow equipment and sanders, to raise and appropriate $76,950.02 for the first year's payment for that purpose. The lease purchase agreement does contain municipal funding escape clause. Says majority vote required.
And as it was explained to me, should the voters have voted down those 2 warrant articles, that's where that escape clause or non-appropriation clause would have come into effect.
No, because we wouldn't have had the commitment yet. It said right there to raise and appropriate $76,000. It doesn't say to raise and appropriate the $400-something thousand. I think you're getting bad information. I'm not an attorney, that's just the way I read it personally.
No. It says a 7-year commitment at $76,000.
No, it does not. Read it again. It says to raise and appropriate $76,000 for the first payment. It doesn't say nothing about any other payments.
How can we not make other payments?
Because that's what the escape clause is for, is if you don't get the vote to get the money again, you can back out of the deal with no penalties or anything.
Larry?
Then, the next point would be to ask the council of record whether or not the municipal escape clause in succeeding years negates the intent of the original authorization. Then, you're off and running.
I think we're off and running already, actually, I think, do you have anything you want to say, Tom?
No, because I wasn't involved in the thing, so you know more about that part than I do.
Yes, Ann?
I was just looking, when we do like the teacher's contract for the school district, at the beginning of the warrant article, we state what the estimated increases are for the 3 years, but when it comes to raise and appropriate, we only say for that next year, we don't say raise and appropriate for all 3 years.
And in the second year.
Pardon?
And in the second year.
It's already approved
It's
by,
approved.
Let me ask you what it says in the bottom. Does it say majority vote or 2/3?
Majority.
I believe we were told it was going to be 2/3 vote if it wasn't for the 1 year to year to year.
I do remember discussion about that, not at the town meeting, but, prior to that, and, apparently it was wrong, it was incorrect. I don't remember what the discussion was exactly in the previous years for different warrant articles, but I do remember something.
Just to move on to something else, did the dead horse move? If not, we stop lashing it and wait for further results.
Well, I think we have an obligation to the people to make sure this is done properly. We have differences of opinions here on this subject, and I think it needs to be resolved. And I mean exhausted to the end, resolved.
Yes, Larry?
Then, very bluntly, who is going to sue? Who is going to pay for it? And where does the legal
Who
opinion
knows?
come from?
You've sued the town before. It could be someone as yourself that doesn't feel it's right, they do it.
Then we wait.
Can we get more clarity somewhere, Liz, on this?
Sure.
I mean, we're gonna have to be sure now. Because I really took it as we bought into those trucks. So,
Yep, vote was approved. Yep, oh.
just to make sure that that it's legal, we have to know.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Amy?
So under the explanation here, it says a non-funding clause is present, so therefore a simple majority vote is needed. Essential differences under a non-funding clause, the town may, by failing to fund future yearly payments of the vehicle, would be required to return the vehicle to the manufacturer. So how would you be in the position not to fund future years?
By zeroing that line of the budget.
No, because that's not what the escape clause is for. The escape clause is not saying if the town chooses not to support the line. It's for if the voters choose not to support that line. It's not for at the.
I'm not sure.
I don't.
I wasn't involved in the conversation with the area or council, but
I can remember Pat Smith's presentation, and he stood right here in this room and says, if we do not get, because I asked it, what happens if we don't vote next year for the money? He says the equipment will have to go back.
I think he misspoke. I think he spoke
But the
incorrectly, I should say.
Problem is that's what the people were told. And this looks like you're trying to pull a fast one in my book.
Oh, I don't think it was necessary for that.
I
It's
do.
not necessary. We're gonna have her look at it, okay? We have difference of opinion here.
And you can also look up the RSA that pertains to this. I'm not trying to pull a fast one.
What is the RSA again, please?
33:7-E.
What was that again? 33 colon,
7-E.
okay, thank you. Anybody else? Eric?
It
Speak
seems
your
like
name,
the
please.
question, Eric Knapp, it seems like the question is if your understanding is correct, we needed a 2/3 majority vote, and if your understanding is correct, we needed a majority vote. Do we know what the voting results were? I know a lot of those articles were passed by large margins.
You should say in the annual report.
I looked at it and see what, we didn't print them this year.
I believe we can get that on the town clerk's website. It should be there.
It could be a moot point if we already have a 2/3 majority vote.
That's one way of looking. Tom?
I think, yes, we need to dig into this, but it also, for the coming year, this raises the point that maybe we need to make sure we do a better job of explaining what these things mean, because I agree with Stan. When I read it, I thought that it was something that was gonna come up to be approved by the voters every year. And I'm thinking maybe we need to do a better job of the explanation in the ballot as to what, it's sort of like, when you vote no for something, you're voting yes for it, actually. I think we need to do a better job of explaining what people are actually voting for when they vote to appropriate money. And how that carries on, especially something that's a multi-year appropriation like this, how that's gonna carry on in future years. Regardless of how this plays out, that we need to do that.
Okay. Okay, I guess, yes.
One of the things, if we could clarify, because in some of the explanation, it indicates that the escape clause changed the voting requirements. That could be one thing that we clarify, that if the escape clause is there, does that in fact change it from this majority to, it changes the threshold, I guess is what I'm saying. Because as I read this article, it's a sample ballot, but it's essentially what was on there. The lease purchase agreement does contain the municipal funds escape clause. Why would we need an escape clause? And I think that's a point of clarification that we probably should narrow down just to make sure these escape clauses we think they need.
Okay. Liz, we had that discussion. There was a contract that had to be put in place first so we can get it started, because they got the new vehicles now, and we're already starting to put money out of the warrant articles in there to pay for that first payment.
Yeah, the first payment has already been paid on 2 of the 3 trucks,
Okay.
and also on the grader.
Okay, but I understand we talked about this, because I brought it up too, but you said they had to have this contract in place just in case. If it passed, so all they have to do is sign it. If it didn't, there was no.
Or some sort of right, exactly, that, or some sort of an agreement or something to for them to do all the work to come up with the proposal, the figures.
Yes, they had to have all that, and then if they said no, well, okay.
No, because the year before was basically the same thing was on the ballot, and there was nothing, they didn't pass, and there was no contract signed.
I think this might have been, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't speak to it.
The year before, a year ago March, there was a similar thing from the trucks. It didn't pass.
Yeah, it didn't pass.
All right, so with that logic, you would have had to have that same contract.
You would have
There
been-
was no contract. You don't sign a contract. Every truck dealer will give you all kinds of pricing if you ask for it. That's their job. No different what I do for a living. There's no contract until after the commitment is made.
But according to our finance director, she advised that clause, if the article failed, which it did in 2019, that clause releases the town of any sort of, financial.
Of any cost, of any kind.
Yeah.
Well-
It was a moot point.
We're gonna have to get more clarity on it. That's okay.
Liz, can you probably look into this and maybe have something for the next meeting, because Pat is gonna be coming in next week. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Moving on to members' comments.
I have a comment. The reason why I asked you to stay, as everyone, not everyone, but most people know that there was an agreement between Milton and Lebanon for the, what do you call it? The services of
Mutual aid.
mutual aid. And it's on Facebook, so it's not like no one knows about it. I went through it, and I guess my first question is, was this authorized by the Board of Selectmen, this agreement?
He had brought it, he's gonna do it to mutual aid agreement, we hadn't seen the agreement, no.
Okay, so,
Nor we have.
okay, well, I guess my question, you don't need to, he has the
No.
authority to enter into this by
The
himself.
fire department needs to do it, yes.
And he
Alright.
did advise the board
Yeah.
that he would be looking into that and getting one
Yes.
signed, because you really do need one, especially on
No, that's what I
the
said.
two
He-
states, not
he-
just two towns, but two states.
That's what I said, he did say.
Okay,
he's
but
going
I
to,
I just wanna see what the protocol was here.
Yeah.
There's 47 streets in Lebanon we're gonna cover. There's no mention of any services rendered back to Milton. Have you read it?
I've seen it.
Yeah. There's no mention of what we can expect back.
Probably talk to chief about that, shouldn't you?
Okay, I just wondered why you were here, because
Yep.
you're the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, that if there's any logic to that. And some people are gonna say, well, we're gonna bill for it. Well, we're not gonna get 100% of our money.
Never do.
Right. It's just the way it is. So basically, we're using tax money, correct? Because it's not, the ambulance isn't 100% supported by its revenues.
No, not 100%.
Right. So
Right.
we're using tax money for 47 streets of another town in another state. I didn't have a problem when we were talking about it first for a few streets, to help. But when we're talking 47 streets, I have a major problem with that. So we'll discuss it with the chief.
That would be my suggestion, to talk to the chief. Of those 47 streets, do we know what they are? Are they major streets? Are they one-home streets? I mean, where I live, I've got one house on it, and that's considered.
So you,
Major
because
street.
you own the street.
No, I don't own it.
But I can only go by what's in the document,
Understand.
all right? I mean, I'd like to know how many streets there is in Lebanon, because that'd give us a percentage of what we're covering for them. That's all I'm gonna say for now until we talk to him. I have a problem with this.
Anybody else? All right, public comment. Seeing none. Our next meeting is October 26th.
Can we leave now?
No, hang on.
No, well, you guys, next meeting is October 26th. Is that going to be good for everybody?
That falls on what day, Bob?
Monday.
That's a problem. And what's the reason we can't have it on a regular Tuesday night?
I just told you the the town forest
Has
has
the
a
room
meeting
reserved. Don't you think, in my mind, that the budget committee and budget season has top priority over this room, over the town forester? I would think that needs to be changed.
there.
So that we can be on the camera, let the people see what's going on, and not interfere with other people on other boards and so forth.
Well, see, that's not my call. They're already scheduled.
Well,
in
that's
there.
why I'm looking at them when I said that we should have priority for this room in budget season.
I don't know what's going on downstairs. I mean, I agree with Stan that it should be videoed. This meeting, I agree the budget committee should take priority. I don't know what's going on downstairs. It can possibly move those downstairs. So we'd have to check with Dana to see what's going on. I have no idea.
And I'll have to get back to the rest of the board members.
That's fine.
Okay? I'll try and get that myself. If they can move downstairs, we'll come up here, because we got the last major budget. That should have been done.
What's the 28th?
There's also a special election Tuesday, November 10th,
Huh?
at the Milton Assembly of God Church, just south of the town office. A useful site, just down the road here. It's a special election for Tuesday, November 10th. How long does this go for?
Probably 8 to 7 or something.
Yeah.
Do we give them any kind of monetary for the use of the building?
I don't believe so, but I can't swear to that.
There's something in that
To the-
agreement that
Is there?
Chris Jacobs
Yeah.
presented to you guys.
What was the reason?
That's a moderator thing.
What is the reasoning for moving it out of downstairs to over there?
Wrong.
Space-
Wrong.
Space and legal requirements.
When we had over 1,000 or 1,300, whatever that number was last year, we found out how cramped it was
Yeah,
downstairs.
that was a special year.
No, only get back if, hang on, go ahead.
So at the next meeting, we're doing Public Works. Anybody else?
Yeah, transfer station, government buildings,
Okay.
town administrator.
Okay, so right after that meeting, are we gonna get like a complete summary of the whole thing so we can see what the total?
Not gonna see it because we're still waiting for the insurance and benefits that are not yet available to us.
And debt service.
And debt
updated
service as
debt
well.
service.
Okay.
Well, after that meeting, we're going to meet and go through, we're gonna review the whole budget. That's there, we're gonna talk about it, we're going to either increase, decrease, or leave it alone.
Well, how can we do that if we don't know what the total is?
We can get as far as we can. The insurance and benefits is pretty much out of our hands. We can't, there's nothing we can do with that.
Did you get an estimate on that?
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't we just enter in with last year's number, with the knowledge that it could go up or down, and then we at least have a starting point that, to see what the percentage over or below last year's budget is.
Okay, we can do that. We'll give a start and just our provision for it. And you get it later in, do you have any idea when?
December usually, isn't it? Isn't it right around December?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
It's
It's
late
usually-
fall.
yeah.
But we'll know that it's probably not gonna change a certain percentage.
Well, you never know.
Okay, but it's better than not having no number.
Do you still use school care?
We do.
Because we got our estimate.
Are you on a different year?
Yes,
You're on a
Yeah,
different plan year?
Yeah.
she's on a fiscal year.
We're on the calendar year.
Okay. We'll go with the assumption on that. Give us something to go on, because we're gonna meet later on to go over it again with the extra numbers so we get, but this is just a number to see what budgets we're going to agree on. And then after that, we can just, because the numbers are never gonna be final until the deliberative session, so we can make changes all the time. So,
Even at the deliberative session.
that's the deliberative session, but right now, we can put a set of numbers, but if we can agree on certain departments that, that's it. We don't have to hash it out at the next meeting. It won't have to be so long, unless somebody wants to bring something back up. For the town employees, I think will be here. If we have more questions for them, we can ask. I want to at least get something in place because December 1st, the school will start. And Larry, go ahead.
That, yeah, basically, what we are asking is an assessment of the accuracy, the need, and the impact of the department budgets that have been presented. And just for simple math, if we say we can spend $10, and we know we have $8 already on board for the departments that are reporting, the question is whether we get a cost of $2 for insurance or a cost of $3. If it comes in at $2, we have our $10 limit. If it comes in at $3, then we are $1 over what we think we can do. So then, the question of the assessment, the need, and the impact of the department budgets we have comes into play. So it's, again, I am surprised that of some of the comments that, I think it was Andy who was properly nervous about next year's budget. That the selectmen in other years had already moved by midsummer to tightly control department expenses and move for freeze, and that has not happened this year.
No, we have not froze, but we have talked to the departments, asked them to.
Yeah. So, okay.
We have been finding, just to talk about that freeze, in the past, that has always come back to bite us, always.
But that was always on the default budget too.
No, it's, no matter when we froze the budget, it always come back to bite us the following year. Because the comment always came up after the fact, well, you don't need it because you didn't use it. Well, they didn't use it, they were asked not to. So it's not that they didn't need it, they did without.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's, so I'm a firm believer, and I'll say this the day I die, that you hire good department heads, You hire good leaders because you trust them to do the right thing. And so far, they have not proven us wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Oh, any new business that comes before the board? Anybody got any new business? Seeing none? Motion to adjourn.
Got it.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We're done.